Welcome back to the Unexpected Podcast with Jake Burnside and Wyatt Spalding. Today we're joined by three-time NAIA National Championship coach, Coach Greg Tonagel. And Coach, welcome on the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate you guys having me. Excited to dialogue a little bit with you.
Yeah, man. Real quick, I just remember first time I saw your program. You were playing Midland University in the 2014 National Championship game. And I saw like you guys had success throughout the years. And I just kind of kept up with your program ever since then. And I'm really impressed with all the success you guys have had in Indiana. I mean, that's a huge basketball state, I bet. So
yeah, that was a breakthrough for us. We had gone to I think 4 out of 5 Elite Eights heading into 2014, and had never gotten to that Final Four. And as you know, in the Midland game, we found ourselves in the national championship. And once we broke through there, we kind of never looked back. But were you actually at the game physically?
no, so I watched it online. I was covering from the back surgery, so I was sitting in my chair with a neck brace on, and I was all excited. It was only one of the things to look forward to was Midland playing you guys, and so yeah. So so Coach, tell us about your beginnings, like your high school career and in your college career as well, your playing career, how you got started in basketball.
Yeah, so I grew up in Indiana, which is it's a basketball state. There's not much else to do, especially in the wintertime. And that people here love their basketball. And I grew up on a dairy farm, actually. And some of my earliest memories, we would milk cows. And I was pretty young, but I would help. And as soon as we get on with chores, we'd go to the hay mow, which is, one level above where we were milking. My dad would send me up there to sweep it off. And we'd get ready for barn ball. Sometimes we were playing pig, or sometimes it was like 3-on-3 if the hired hands would jump in. And one of the unique things that I tell people, it'd be the middle of winter, it'd be 25 degrees outside. But in that barn, you had all the cows at the lower level, so the heat would rise. And then you had hay upstairs kind of insulating it. So you could play in T-shirts and shorts in the middle of winter. And it was unique, but it was also kind of, nostalgic Hoosier basketball. So I grew up, idolizing Larry Bird, who was a Hoosier. And my dream was to, Damon Bailey. My dream was to make it down to state. And so I played for LaPorte High School, LaPorte Slicers. We weren't a too well-known of a program or a big school, but we made a run in the last single class state tournament. So back in the day, Indiana, whether you were a small school or big school, you played in one tournament. There were no classes. And there was only a few states that did that. And Indiana was one of them. And if you guys have seen the movie Hoosiers, that's what made the movie so popular. Little Milan was, enrollment of like 40 kids, and they played Muncie Central, who had thousands. Well, anyways, we make it to the state finals that year. And there was almost a civil war in the state of Indiana over class basketball. It had been voted in somehow through administration, but the general perception within the public was, we don't want class basketball. We're unique. And so it was a pretty big deal. And when I walked out in that state finals game, I still can remember it was played at the Hoosier Dome, where the Colts played at that time. And on the big screen flashed the attendance, which was 28,364. And I just remember taking it in saying, there are 28,000 people at a high school game, and I'm part of this high school game. And I think people were kind of bidding farewell to high school basketball at the time. Well, we lost on a last second shot, and it still goes down as one of my worst games. I still kind of beat myself up for it. But the memory of that run and what it meant for our town, we had, I think, 6,000 people drive 3 hours from LaPorte down to Indianapolis to watch the game. And we were orange, so there was a sea of orange. From there, I went on to play at Valparaiso University, which is right down the road. And my experience wasn't what I had hoped it was. I tore my ACL after my freshman year, and then I had 5 more knee surgeries kind of in and out, and never fully recovered. But it was during that period that I was really called into coaching. I didn't go into college wanting to coach, but having gone through those injuries, having seen the game from a different perspective, I felt like God just put on my heart that coaching was going to be, my calling and the way I get to influence people. And looking back, I wouldn't trade those injuries for anything. It really shaped me and molded me. And Then I'm 24 and the Indiana Wesleyan job opens up. And I really only put my name in because I wanted some interview experience. And my brother was actually playing at Indiana Wesleyan at the time. So there's a 5-year difference between us. I'm 24, he's 19. He calls me and says, they fired our coach. You should apply. And, my response was, well, they're not going to hire me. I'm a graduate assistant. I'm 24. They need somebody with experience. Well, long story short, long process. I got an interview and they basically hired me because Coach Homer Drew, who I played for at Valpo, was a well-known coach with a very good reputation. He just stuck his neck out and said, you need to give this kid a chance. And I remember getting hired all excited, but like, oh no, what do I do now? I'm in charge of something now. And I had a player that was older than me. I recruited a JUCO player who was like 24 and 8 months, and I was 24 and 2 months when I started coaching him. And I honestly didn't know really what I was doing, but I was passionate and I was excited. And we hit the ground running and just tried to build something special.
Well, that's awesome. I bet going in, what was the program like when you got there? Was it successful before, or was it like kind of a rebuilding? Like you got to rebuild this program?
Well, it was a tremendous opportunity. I don't want to ever bash what was going on previously, but they just hadn't realized their potential. It was a sleeping giant. I think a lot of people realize that. And there's nothing but upside opportunity. They had won 6 games and 7 games, I think, in the 2 years prior. And like I said, my brother was there. So I'm coaching my brother. We kind of had to start all over with recruiting, and we really did luck out on a couple of just key recruits right off the bat, and we're able to turn the thing around and get rolling in the right direction.
Dang, that's really awesome. I see so you're at Valparaiso, one of the things is you were the team chaplain as a player. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, and that was kind of that period. I was always a leader on my team.
Right.
I think everybody's got to find a way to add value. And as I stepped into college, I quickly realized I was no longer the most talented kid. I couldn't just step on the floor and have the impact I had in high school. So I had to find different ways to impact the team. And one of them was just, I was very passionate about my faith. I loved my teammates and I wanted to share with them. And so coach started giving me more and more opportunities about, pregame chapel talks, and he'd send me on the road to speak. And all the while, I didn't know it, but God was preparing me for being a coach later on. Cause I guess I don't primarily see myself as a basketball coach, but what I say is I coach people. At the end of the day, that's what I do. And so I got to learn how to do that. It was just about spending time with my teammates, pouring into their lives. And I think over time, coach just began to call me the chaplain. And while I was injured, it also gave me something to do. I mean, I was out for over a year at a time. And there was times where I thought about stepping away. I'm not playing. All my friends are doing other things. But that kept me there. The calling to pour into other guys kept me where I was. I'm sure glad I did at that moment.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So like, as your time at Indiana Wesleyan, when did you see like your team really start to turn the corner where you guys were making Elite Eights or making the national tournament for your program?
Well, we were in a really good league, and I think that helped because immediately we're playing the best talent in the country. And it was in year 2 that we won the league, and it was a little bit of a surprise. We were actually picked last in the league, and we ended up becoming co-champs. And I think our guys said it, at that moment just felt some confidence, because that's what you need. You need to feel that confidence having been there. And we got out to Branson and went to some Elite Eights, which was pretty significant. But then after a while, as you guys know, people begin to go, well, Elite Eights aren't good enough anymore. What's wrong? Why can't you get to the Final Four? And I began to ask that same question. And it was in 2013, season ended. I decided to call up a couple coaches who had won national championships and who had played differently than us. And I was just looking for answers. I knew there was something missing. I knew I had to grow. I mean, I was a young coach, obviously hadn't been with a ton of different programs and hadn't learned. But the interesting thing was, as I visited these programs, I'm taking notes and I'm kind of looking for like basketball related things. I'm looking for schemes and drills and maybe a new offense. The word fearless kept popping up because I heard some of these coaches talk about it, and their specific coach talked about it a lot. And I knew when I walked away from that visit, I was there for 2 days, that I was to learn how to develop fearless men, fearless basketball players. And our program was to become fearless. I didn't really know how to do it, but I knew that was the call. So I took it back to our staff and I just said, man, clear as day, like we are to become fearless. And this was 2013. It was kind of before fearless became popular through, pop culture. And you didn't see it a lot, but because I grew up in Indiana and I grew up watching Bob Knight and Gene Cady, some of the greatest coaches ever, but what they used to motivate people was fear. And it just became clear to me that although fear can be a motivator, it's also a paralyzer. Like it just holds people, right? It puts a lid on their potential. And so I had to learn how to flip that narrative and pull fear out of the game. And so I began to just pray, begin to get into scripture. Our team began to study scripture, and we were amazed at what we were learning about how to remove fear from our lives. And as we removed fear from our lives, we began to play better. And so that first year was 2014. We find ourselves just making an incredible run, and all we were talking about was being fearless. And it culminates in the national championship. We're playing Midland, who had beat us pretty badly in December, who was rolling the night before. We had all the reasons to be fearful. And I remember the night before the game just talking about it, like, guys, this whole year has been about being fearless, and we've learned what it's meant. In our biggest moment now, let's go out and display that. And I meant this. I said, I don't care what happens. Like, we're here. This is the biggest stage you'll ever find yourselves on. Be fearless and you'll have no regrets. And I think that really played into us playing really well that next night.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but on that 2014 team, didn't you have a pair of brothers that were really good? And one was from, like, he played at Indiana State or something?
Yep, good call. We had the Mahurin brothers. Lane at that time was a 6'7" freshman. RJ was a 6'8" senior. RJ transferred from Indiana State. He was a starter in the Missouri Valley. I think he averaged like 12 points a game.
Wow.
But kind of got to the end of his career and just said, man, I'm not having the fun that I want to have. And my brother would be an awesome experience to play with my brother. So RJ transferred. And RJ was big that year, especially down the stretch in that Midland game. I still remember a play when Midland cut our lead to like 6, and RJ just punched one in, by just being just big and strong. And it was like, I knew we were going to win in that moment.
Awesome.
Wow. Dang. I love what you share about your purpose and your mission with your team. And in the midst of having that much success and the travel, how do you balance between family and life stuff during the season with all that and still having a successful program as you do? I can't imagine that's easy.
No, it's not easy. And I think in coaching, unfortunately, so many coaches leave behind, their families in pursuit of an excellent program. And man, it just scares me to think that I could get to the end of my life and maybe having won a bunch of championships, but missed out on key things with my family. I got 6 kids, so I got a lot going on at home.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of basketball games and dance recitals and you name it. And I just told my team this the other day. I said, because we're learning about commitment, and that's kind of our word right now. And I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. My commitment to my family will always come before you guys. And I said, you may not understand that as an 18-year-old, but I would hope you would do the same someday, when you get a job, is that you will prioritize your family. And it goes along with, we talk a lot about I am third, which is really about rightly ordering your life, right? It's putting God first and other people second. And I don't want to preach something that I can't live myself. And I'd be lying if I said, there's not tension in that, right? There's sometimes where I just leave the office early because I'm going to my kid's game and there's more film to watch. But what I've learned is there's always more film to watch. I could watch the same game 10 times and feel like I hadn't done enough. But at some point you have to just say, this is what I stand for. These are my always. I always do this, or these are my nevers. I never do this. And as a committed man, I got to make that decision. And so I think the whole program's prioritized that. And I don't think it's something that we're ever going to regret, down the road.
That's awesome.
So does that kind of go with I saw your coach's mission is to raise a generation of men who will trade the pursuit of me for the pursuit of 3. So God first, your family, and then team. Is that what?
Yeah, I think that's well said. I mean, I think we live, in a world right now that just tells everybody that me is the center of life, right? Like, we're shaping young people to just feed their own desires, look out for themselves, take care of what they want. And we tell them, if you do that, then you're going to be successful and happy. And the problem is people aren't happy when they focus in on themselves. And I don't think they're more successful. Like, we only become successful when we help other people get what they want to get. And we only grow when other people pour into us. And I think that's one of the big challenges of coaching, right? You sit in a locker room and you got 15 guys sitting around a locker. If everybody's thinking about themselves, like that's a pretty bad situation to be in. And then you get on the court, and if everybody's thinking about themselves, that's when you play bad basketball. And so we're trying to flip that narrative and just say, because we believe it's rooted in scripture, right? Like sometimes I think we complicate things like, well, I'm not sure what God wants me to do. And I'm like, it's pretty simple. Like you live God first, you live others second, put yourself third. You'd be amazed at how easier I think your life can become, or maybe just more fulfilling it. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean you're not going to face obstacles or challenges, but I think too often we just focus inward, and that paralyzes us, and we're not living life to the full. And so we tell our guys when they come in, our job is to flip that. We want to produce men who are going to pursue lives that reflect God first, others second, and then self third.
Yeah, I love those mindsets and the way you teach it and to your kids.
Yeah. So throughout your many years of coaching, what are some, do you have any good stories about players that you saw they put the team first, or they put the team first by either trying hard in practice or speaking up vocally, whether they were the number one scorer on the team or the last guy on the bench?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I could talk days. And I think one thing we do is we highlight these stories often, because this is the way you pass down culture, right? You tell stories that embody who you want to become. And one of my favorites is, we had this kid named Ben Carlson, who was a great leader for us, came in, did not play his freshman and sophomore year, played a little bit his junior year, and then worked really hard going into senior year, lost about 50 pounds, busted his butt, and had prepared himself for this senior year. Well, as the senior year is approaching, we signed a kid from the University of Kansas in the same position as Ben, 6'10" kid. His name was Evan Maxwell. And it was apparent that Evan was probably going to be the starting center. But at the same time, Ben had worked really hard and prepared himself for this moment. And Evan came in and had a little bit of a slow start, as most transfers do. And so we're 3 or 4 games in, and Evan's not performing. So we're starting Ben. And out of nowhere, Ben calls this meeting with the coaches and us. And we're kind of like, what's Ben going to do? And he sits down and he says, Evan, this is my senior year. I've waited my entire life for this, and I've worked my butt off for this, and I want to win a national championship. But I'm going to be 100% honest. We're not winning it with me starting and you on the bench. But he says, I'm also going to tell you this. You better take my spot, because I ain't giving it to you. And I couldn't believe what I just heard. I was like, bro, that's ridiculous. He just challenged him. I wanted to run through a wall at that.
Wow.
And something went off at Evan. He started working harder. He started picking it up. And it was 4 games later, we started Evan. Well, we won the national championship that year, and Evan was MVP in the national tournament. Evan down the stretch was clutch. He was big. And it was all because Ben didn't put himself first, didn't look inward, wasn't self-protective of this is my spot. I've worked my whole year. Ben thought, what does the team need best? How do I leverage my gifts for somebody else? And as a result, everybody flourished. And I remember cutting down the nets and talking to Ben, and Ben's like, I wouldn't have it any other way. And to me, that's the ultimate story of what it means to be an IM3rd basketball player.
And that's the kind of kids I'm sure that you want to recruit, that you want to have in your locker room. Wow.
That's amazing.
100%.
Yeah. Dang. So what was one place that the coolest environment, maybe in your guys' conference, to play or to coach at, or maybe it's obviously at home is probably pretty awesome, but is there another place that you guys enjoy? It's fun to go play at?
And that's a good question. We're pretty good in our home. I love Lucky. It's been good to us. We have some amazing fans, but there's something special about going on the road and getting a victory. When your backs are against the wall, it does something to gel you as a team, and it brings you together. And our league's full of it. And the thing I love about our league, it's the proximity. So our fans travel. We'll go to Taylor, who's one of our rivals. They're 20 minutes. We'll travel a bunch of fans. We'll go 35 to Huntington, travel. St. Francis is a big rival. They're an hour away. And so I think our league just really has some great environments. And anytime you're on the road and you come together in a big moment, those locker room celebrations are pretty special and some of the most fun aspects of coaching.
Yeah. something about going on the road, feeling like you against the world, and just coming out of a hostile environment and getting a win is pretty awesome, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So with all the successes you've had at Indiana Wesleyan, have you ever thought about moving up in the college ranks, or have you always said like, no, this is my home, this is what I want to be my whole coaching career?
That's a great question. I don't think you ever know exactly, like where you're going to end. When I came in, I'm headed in my 18th year. And when I took the job at Indiana, I said, no way did I think I was going to be here 18. And it's not that I had aspirations to move anywhere. It's just, I don't know what the average lifespan of a coach is, but it's probably not more than 5 years. You either get fired or, you're moving on.
Right.
The thing that I get a lot is people say, are you moving up? And I'm like, well, define up for me, and in their minds, up is always a bigger pay raise and a higher division. But what I tell them is, I got one of the best jobs in the country. I got an opportunity to win national championships every year. I get to do what I love the most, which is implement my faith through discipleship into basketball. And I get to do it with my family. Like, my kids are highly involved in this program, and I've had opportunities before, and people have talked to me about them. And the number one question I always ask is, well, talk to me about family life. And it's usually significantly less opportunity for me and my family. And that's always just been a non-negotiable for me. So that's been very hard. And just being in coaching, to be honest with you, it's one of those professions everybody wants to get in, but there's a lot of miserable coaches. And I'm one of the coaches. I love what I do. I love my job. I love the people I work with. My staff has been amazingly consistent and been with me for a long time. And that's rare. You don't see that. I just think we got something different. And not that I don't ever think, or wonder, well, where might I be next? But I try to stay present with where I'm at and be very thankful for the opportunity that I've been given here at Indiana Wesleyan.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I like that. And, when people go up the scale, you go to a Division I or where there's a lot more time, a lot more this and that. So I love what you said about being planted or bloom where you're at. I love that.
Yep.
So who are some of the coaches throughout your life, like when you're ever thinking like what you should do as a coach, you look back and, I wonder what my past coaching coach would do, or what would his advice be to me? Who do you look up to in the coaching world?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I played for Homer Drew, who is a great man and a great coach. And much of what I do, came from him. He retired, and I played for Scott Drew for a year. Scott's at Baylor, obviously won a national championship. And Coach Scott Drew and I stay in contact. And, I'd lean on him for advice and just conversations. I think in coaching, it can be a lonely profession when you're at the top at times. So just trying to stay in contact with him. But I love watching basketball and learning, from programs that I admire. I'll watch Kansas because I just admire their consistency, and I'll watch Houston because I think they're just tough and they can grind it out. And so, I don't think there's ever a point where you're like, I've got this figured out. To me, every season is a challenge. We just scrimmaged last night and did really poorly, and we've got high expectations. And, I walked away from the scrimmage and I'm like, man, do I know anything about basketball? Like, why did we play so bad? Like, you carry those burdens, right, of your team. But I love that challenge. I love waking up saying, okay, I got to figure this out. Like, my team has to get better. There's certain buttons that need to be pushed. What are those buttons? And let's go to bat and start doing it. And I think the moment I wake up and I don't have that urgency, it's probably time to do something else.
Yeah. So for you guys, obviously practice has started. You're in the thick of it. When's the first game, and what conference are you guys in NAIA?
So our first game is next Friday, October 28th. We kick off. We play this Crossroads League WAC challenge. So we're in the Crossroads League, 8 Indiana schools, 1 Ohio, 1 Michigan. And we're playing another league called the WAC, which is spread out in terms of Michigan and Ohio and Indiana, I guess. We always play. It's kind of like the Big Ten ACC challenge. So we do that every year, and it rotates. But it's a tough opener for us. We follow that up with Thomas More, who's going to be top 10. Oregon Tech's going to be a top 20 team in the country. By far one of our most challenging schedules I think that I've ever had. But I think our guys are excited about it.
Yeah,
awesome.
Dang.
So when your players go through your program and they graduate, what do you hope they take from your program besides just, learning to play better basketball and being a better player?
Absolutely. If that's all they've done, then, I've failed them, because they're going to be here for 4 years. Maybe they'll go play professionally for a few years, but at some point, like, they enter the real world, and at some point, their relationships matter even more. I tell the guys, like, if you're selfish now, probably going to hurt our offense. You may stifle our defense. But if you get married and you're selfish, you're going to hurt somebody who really loves you and that you really love, or you're going to end up maybe hurting your kids for a long time. And
Yeah.
I just say, man, the stakes are higher then, so let's get it right now. Let this be a laboratory. Let us explore. Let us work on some things now, so that you can become a man who, when he leaves this place, learns to put God first and other people second. Because I think if you can do that, wherever you're planted, wherever you're put, you're going to benefit other people. You're going to be a blessing. You're not going to distract or take away or hinder. And we just need more men like that in our culture,
Mhm.
I think. And the more men we get that live that way, I think our culture becomes better.
Definitely.
That's great. 2 questions to finish up. What's one of those books back there you'd recommend? And one thing you're finding that brings you joy outside of coaching, maybe with your family or that you're doing?
Good question. One of my favorite books is called The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness by Tim Keller.
Yeah,
Uh,
I gotta, that's great. That's a great book.
yeah, you got that
Yeah,
book?
I could grab, I think it's over here somewhere, but yeah, I've read it. It's a little short one.
Yes.
Yep.
I read it, I don't know, 5 times a year, so every other month I pick it up, and it's a great reminder of, like, how to get out of my own head, how to stop thinking about myself, how to coach fearlessly. I love that book. Yes, about hobbies. I'm a big hunter. So you guys said you're from Nebraska. The first thing I was thinking about was, hunting out there, because I love mostly bow hunting. But I just got back, took my son and my dad. We went to South Dakota and went duck hunting, pheasant hunting, and I picked a bad profession to be a hunter, right? Because, like, we're
Yeah.
kicking off our season as all the good fall hunting's happening. But I just love nature, and I love getting out and exploring.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Coach, for joining us on Be Unexpected. We'll definitely keep watching you throughout the season, and good luck with your season, Coach. We'll be tuning into your games, and hope you guys can finish strong this year. So good luck.
Well, I appreciate you guys, and just hearing a little bit of your story is really inspiring. I mean it. I would give you an invitation. You ever want to talk to my team or share anything with my team? I think they could learn a lot from you guys. And so thanks to you guys for what you're doing, and I hope this podcast continues to reach people, because it's pretty awesome what you guys are doing.
Well, thanks, Coach. We
Thanks,
we
Coach.
would love to do that. So we'll definitely hit you up for that. So thanks, Coach, for joining us on Be Unexpected. I think it's stopped. I got it. Wait, hang on. All right, what a great interview with Indiana Wesleyan head coach, Coach Greg Tonagel. He was a great guy. I would love to play for this guy. What I really liked about him was, he put his family above the whole program. Like how he talked about getting other coaching jobs. He asked like what the family life would be like, and he wouldn't get to spend much time with his family. Maybe if he took another job where at Indiana Wesleyan, he could have the best of both worlds, put all his time into the program, but also have time for his family as well. And especially with 6 kids, that's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
But
I can
can't
that's pretty
imagine.
crazy.
Yeah.
How I'm sure the success he's had, you've got to imagine he's got to have D2 or smaller D1 schools after him. But as he said, what's a better job than Indiana Wesleyan? They're winning championships. But then back to when he played at Valparaiso, he got injured and probably didn't have the career he wanted. But in the middle of all that, he was the team chaplain, and just doing a great job in that and being a leader in that role behind the scenes led him to become the Indiana Wesleyan coach at age 24, while his brother was on the team. So that's pretty crazy for a 24-year-old out of college to get a head coaching job there. And he's been there. Is this his 18th year?
Yeah. I think he said 18 years. So since 05. And that's awesome that he
Yeah.
created that, has been there that long. And he took the program to 3 national championships
Yeah.
and done way more than just winning championships, like
Yeah.
just creating great men in his program. So,
Yeah.
all right. Thanks for watching Be Unexpected. You can follow us on Instagram on the Be Unexpected Instagram page, which is Be Unexpected 100. And then also we got an email account if you'd like to be on the show or know someone that we should interview. It's the same Be Unexpected 100 at gmail.com. Follow us on our Facebook page. And we love to hear your story. So thanks for watching another episode of Be Unexpected. See ya.